The drive for redemption. One other consequence of feeling unlovable deserves a fuller exploration because it is so pervasive and powerful. With the burden of unlovability comes not only survival terror, as mentioned earlier, but also an intense drive to be redeemed, to have the caretaker who originally gave you the message that you are unlovable change his mind and tell 74, you are the one you've been waiting for. You that he does indeed value you. This drive for redemption will be a major factor in your choice of mate because you will seek someone who looks, sounds, or acts like the original redeemer. You will be strongly drawn to someone who has certain similarities to one of your parents, if that person was the original redeemer. As you search for a partner, you will feel a big, intoxicating charge for certain people. If you follow that infatuated feeling inside to its source, it's likely that you will find one of those basement children in a state of ecstasy at the prospect of finally being redeemed and cared for in the way it has longed for. That particular person has become the exile's designated rescuer/nurturer/redeemer. The exile believes that if you can get that particular person to love you, it will prove that you aren't so unlovable after all. It will be as if your mother changed her mind and now finds you adorable, or your father not only stops viewing you as a failure but instead is very proud of you. The exile believes it will finally get the love and security it craved from one or both parents and will be pulled from the pool of shame and worthlessness in which it has been drowning. Consider my client Tina, an attractive 32-year-old veteran of the dating scene who came to me asking, "Why am I only attracted to assholes? Why can't I go for guys who respect me and treat me well?" After several sessions, Tina found an exiled part, an 8-year-old girl who was stuck in the past at a time when her father, whom she had earlier described as a demanding narcissist, was continually ignoring her attempts to get him to play. The development and power of exiles, 75. With her, he was rarely home, and the little time he spent there was consumed with work or playing ball with her older brother. This younger version of Tina felt invisible to him, as though she didn't exist in his eyes. The little girl was staring desolately at her father as he played with her brother, waiting for him to notice her. As she watched that scene from her past, Tina teared up and said she felt sad for that poor, ignored little girl. I asked Tina to enter that scene and be there with the little girl in the way she had needed someone to be at the time. Tina said she approached the girl and tried to get her attention, but the girl ignored her and kept gazing longingly at her father. I told Tina to hang in there and just keep showing the girl that she cared for her, even if the girl kept ignoring her. The girl looked at Tina curiously and told her that she only wanted her father. I had Tina ask the girl what she was afraid would happen if she didn't get her father's love. The girl said that if he didn't love her, there must be something wrong with her. Tina told the 8-year-old that there was nothing wrong with her and that, instead, her father just didn't know how to relate to little girls and thought boys were more important. The girl said she didn't care, she still needed his love to feel okay. It took several sessions, during which Tina kept showing the 8-year-old she cared about her, for the girl to believe that Tina could offer her anything of value and to shift her gaze from her father to Tina. At some point, the girl dropped her stoic mask and fell sobbing into Tina's arms. When the girl was ready, Tina took her out of that scene to live in her apartment with her. 76. You are the one you've been waiting for. And continued to shower her with love. The worthlessness and unlovability lifted out of the little girl's body, replaced by a calm peacefulness. Tina's father had given that little girl the burden of unlovability and, because the girl felt so bad, Tina had exiled her. Consequently, the girl didn't trust that she could get anything from Tina. Instead, she had Tina become infatuated with men who, like her father, were handsome and powerful but, also like her father, were self-centered workaholics. The pattern with these men was always the same. Tina would become totally enamored of each one, blind to his obvious red flags and thrilled with his attention because the 8-year-old felt suddenly released from the curse of unlovability and from exile. Tina would dote on the guy as if she were a grateful child. Gradually, the man would complain of feeling smothered and would begin to treat her poorly. Tina would feel extremely wounded as the inner 8-year-old was thrust back into the rejecting scene with her father and enveloped once again in a black cloak of worthlessness. Frightened by the severity of her reactions, the man would either dump her or continue to mistreat her until her protective parts finally overrode the 8-year-old and pulled her out of the relationship. Then she would live with an abiding sense of unlovability until the next charismatic redeemer came along. Once the 8-year-old started trusting that she didn't need her father's attention because Tina was there for her, everything changed. Now she could see the men's faults that the development and power of exiles, 77, had been obscured by the little girl's father trance. Now she was attracted to men who were interested in her and treated her well, even if they didn't look like male models and make 6 figures. She began seeing Steve, a divorced high school teacher who was a devoted father to his 2 young sons. I continued to work with Tina as she tried to adjust to this new kind of man and new way of relating. She said that while she sometimes missed the rapturous early stages with the other men, it was a relief to be off that roller coaster and involved with someone who cared as much for her as she did for him. She also noticed that when Steve did something thoughtless, she didn't react with the same intensity. Tina's sense of worth no longer depended on her partner's actions because the little girl knew Tina loved her no matter what Steve did. I have found that this drive for redemption has, to some degree, infected the love lives of most of my clients. It is reinforced by our culture's relentless messages that finding that special person is the key to happiness and that to be alone is to be a loser. Just by growing up in this environment, you will have parts that won't let you enjoy life until you find that elusive soulmate and that are disinterested in anything you yourself can offer them. If your parents injected even a moderate dose of worthlessness into such parts, you will be perpetually strapped into a worthlessness-driven roller coaster like Tina's or one of its many variations. There are many variations, one of which is the tarnished halo pattern in which you become dissatisfied when your chosen redeemer starts to like you. She can't be that great if she thinks I'm hot, or 78, you are the one you've been waiting for. Shows parts of him or herself that don't fit the redeemer's profile. Why is he crying? He's supposed to be the strong one. Another variation is the dump before you get dumped pattern in which you distance from your redeemer before she gets close enough to see how defective you are. The point is that unlovability and its associated survival terror and drive for redemption are powerful creators of the relationship hells we find ourselves trapped in. Confucius said, "The way out is via the door." Why is it that no one will use this method? There is a door out of these relationship hells, but no one knows about it because everyone in our culture points us toward the doors that lead to people outside us, which, they promise, open to stairways to heaven. Unfortunately, each time we head up those stairs, they inevitably begin to disintegrate, and we fall back into hell. To deal with the burden of unlovability, our culture offers 2 doors. 1. Find a redeemer to prove the unlovability wrong, or 2. Find activities or substances to distract from it, medication, TV, internet, work, shopping, drugs and alcohol, or other addictive behavior. Neither choice ever really works. The irony is that the effective door leads inside, to the exiled childlike part that can be retrieved from the past hell in which it is stuck and shown by you that it never was unlovable in the first place. Burdens from abuse. Your designated redeemer will inevitably fail because he has no more idea of how to help that little girl or boy out of the past than you do. Also, since you picked the development and power of exiles, 79. That person because he resembled the parent who hurt you, it is likely that he will, at some point, hurt you in the same way your parent did. It's as though you walk around with an invisible bear trap on your leg, searching for the person who holds the key to unlock the trap. When you find that person, you rejoice at the relief, but later find that he carries other bear traps that he applies to both your legs. If you were physically or sexually abused, your exiles will carry other beliefs about your value that contribute to these unlovability/redemption patterns. One such belief is that you brought the abuse on yourself and therefore are bad and undeserving of real love. You will tolerate a great deal of abuse from your designated redeemer because it only confirms what you believe about yourself, and you will find it hard to trust or accept being treated respectfully. You will have parts that believe you have to pay somehow, perhaps in sexual favors or excessive caretaking, for any kindness you receive. You will assume that a decent person would never stay with you. These are the kinds of assumptions most abused children make about themselves because their young minds can find no other explanation for why adults would treat them so badly. Also, it is safer for a child to hate herself than to be angry at the abuser, who will only hurt her more if she shows any defiance. If you were abused, it is likely that you have childlike exiles frozen in time when the abuse took place that hold fast to this kind of self-loathing. 80. You are the one you've been waiting for. These beliefs about unworthiness combine with an intense drive for redemption, the intensity of which is often positively correlated with the level and chronicity of abuse, to explain why so many people keep going back to abusive partners, even when they have reasonable alternatives. They are addicted to the fleeting moments when the perceived redeemer shows them love or protects them, and they believe they deserve to be mistreated. It is important to remember that this is just a more extreme version of the redemption pattern that most people's exiles play out. Whether love will last. The final set of influential beliefs that exiles often carry has to do with whether or not they will lose whatever love they get. Some clients, when they finally make contact with an exile, see an image of a child who is shriveled, zombie-like, staring into space, and unresponsive to their presence. These parts have been so devastated by losing the love of a caretaker that they give up on ever getting any love again. The loss may have come from neglect, rejection, or abandonment by a parent, or from a sudden death or other situational loss. Those events, especially if they are repeated, leave a child not only with the assumption that love will never last, but also with a conviction that the pain of losing it is so horrible that it is better to never open to it again. Such fatalism will keep you from risking true intimacy with anyone or, if you do take the risk of finding a partner, from ever really opening your heart to her, because you expect her to leave at any moment. It seems wise not to invest much emotionally. The development and power of exiles. 81. Self-fulfilling prophecies. These beliefs that our exiles carry about love not only limit how much intimacy is possible in our lives, but they also often create the exact scenarios that the exiles fear. For example, if you don't open your heart to your partner because you fear she will leave, she is much more likely to leave than if you did open to her. Once she does leave, your exile's belief is further confirmed, and you are more likely to create the same dynamic in your next relationship. As another example, if you become highly dependent on, controlling of, or codependent with your designated redeemer because you feel so unlovable, he will lose respect for you and treat you poorly, confirming your beliefs about yourself. It is one of the great injustices in this world that so often people who are abused as children are doomed to lives of recurrent mistreatment by the beliefs and emotions they accumulated during the initial abuse. Often such people are blamed by family members or mental health professionals for choosing and deriving pleasure from their plight. There has to be something she's getting from being with such an awful guy. She must enjoy being dominated. Exercise. You can get some idea of the kinds of extreme beliefs about love and relationships your exiles carry by thinking about your childhood, which is what many conventional therapies focus on. 82. You are the one you've been waiting for. For example, how much were you objectified, abused, or made to feel worthless by your parents? How much did you have to care for them? What might your exiles believe about love because of those experiences? It is hard, however, to know exactly what your exiles' beliefs about love are until you actually listen to them directly. That may not be possible at this point because your protectors may not be ready to let you listen to them. In that case, this exercise will not yield much information, and you may need to find an IFS therapist to help you access your exile's beliefs. Think of times in your relationship when you felt extremely vulnerable. The feeling might be hurt, shame, fear of abandonment, fear of engulfment, rejection, neediness, or the drive for redemption. Choose the feeling that comes up most frequently. Now, focus on your memory of that feeling and see if you can sense where that part is located in or around your body. Notice how you feel toward that vulnerable part of you. Tell any parts that fear or dislike it that you are just going to get to know it a little better, and ask them to relax and step back. Continue to ask fearful or critical parts to step back until you feel curious about the exile. Once you feel purely curious, it's safe to ask the part what it wants you to know about itself. Try to listen with an open heart and mind. If it feels safe, share what you learn with your partner. The Development and Power of Exiles, 83. Attachment theory in exiles. I assert a completely different explanation for why people abused as children often repeat the mistreatment in their current relationships. This dynamic relates to the power of the beliefs that exiles carry. To understand it, let's explore a body of research called attachment theory. Decades ago, the founder of attachment theory, British psychoanalyst John Bowlby, posited that early experiences with caretakers have a profound influence on people's later relationships. In the 1950s, Bowlby, after studying animals, proposed that human infants were no different from other ground-living primates in having an innate drive to become attached to their caregivers. He put forth the idea that the kind of attachment an infant forms to a parent will have a huge impact on his or her development. He suggested that a child will form an internal working model of the world based on those early interactions with a caretaker, which will influence the child's approach to life thereafter. Psychologist Mary Ainsworth tested Bowlby's theory in the laboratory by separating infants from their mothers for 20 minutes and then reuniting them. She found that the kind of mother a child had was a good predictor of how the baby would respond to the separation, and that the way the child reacted, his or her attachment style, was a powerful predictor of success in later life. She distinguished 4 basic categories of attachment styles, a framework that has held up over hundreds of replications. 84. You are the one you've been waiting for. Of this study, mothers who were consistently and tenderly responsive to their baby's needs produced securely attached infants. Those children showed signs of missing their mothers during separation and sometimes cried, but when the mothers came back, the children were quickly soothed and returned to their play. Infants of mothers who were consistently cold, rejecting, neglectful, or rigid became avoidant. Avoidant children showed little emotion throughout, seeming indifferent to the parent's departure or return. Another group of mothers were inconsistent, sometimes appropriately nurturing and at other times trying to connect with the child in ways that were sudden and insensitive to the child's state of mind. Their infants showed what is called ambivalent attachment. They clutched at the mother when they were together, wailed inconsolably when they were separated, and remained that way after her return. The final group, those showing disorganized attachment, often were victims of abuse or of highly neglectful and unpredictable parenting. Those infants did strange things during the exercise, such as moving in circles, rocking back and forth, and entering a sort of frozen trance. As my clients focus on the felt sense of their exiles, a visual image of those parts often comes to them. Over years of working with clients in this way, I have noticed that clients' images of exiles fit the same categories that attachment theorists use with children. That is, some clients see an image of a crying, needy boy or girl who frantically clings to them, much as ambivalently attached children cling to their mothers. Others find an inner child who. The Development and Power of Exiles, 85. Seems totally distracted, unaware, or ignoring of their presence or angrily pouting and rejecting, like the avoidant children in the experiments. Still other exiles appear to be frozen, half dead, devoid of any life force, or in a kind of frenzy when the client first sees them, similar to Ainsworth's disorganized infants. What Bowlby called the child's internal working model is the belief system about love carried by your exiles. There is considerable research in the attachment field documenting the impact of these working models on later relationships. Attachment re-injuries. The acts that created these beliefs and emotions in your exiles in the first place are called attachment injuries. When your intimate partner does something similar to what your original caretaker did, you suffer what I call an attachment re-injury. Attachment re-injuries, then, are events in which you experience your partner as having betrayed, abandoned, or humiliated you, reaffirming the original message to your exiles that they are unlovable. The degree to which that message devastates you depends on how much worthlessness your exiles already carry. For example, Tom and Judy came to see me because they both agreed that Tom's explosive rages were destroying their relationship. They said that while he had always had a temper, things had become much worse since the death of his father 2 years earlier. Now, at unpredictable points in arguments with Judy, Tom just lost it and, while he had never hit her, he became very 86. You are the one you've been waiting for. Loud and threatening, and would follow her all over the house. After a few history-taking sessions, I asked Tom if he wanted to change the way that angry part of him took over, and he said he did. I had him focus on it and find where it seemed to be located in his body. He found it in his arms and fists. I had him focus on it there and asked him how he felt toward it. He said he was afraid of it because it could overwhelm him so suddenly and because it said and did such hurtful things. As he focused on it, an image appeared to him of a devil, complete with horns and a tail. With the intention of helping Tom access his self, I asked him to find the part of him that was afraid of that devil and see if it was willing to separate from him, to step back for a little while, so he could get to know this devil. He said that the part would only step back if the devil was first contained, so Tom, in his mind's eye, put the devil in a locked room. As he looked at it through a window, Tom said that the devil was furious at being locked up and was ranting and raving in the room. I asked how he felt toward it now, and he said he was interested in knowing why it was so upset. The content and tone of Tom's answer indicated that more of his self was present at that point, which meant that it was safe to proceed, so I told Tom to enter the room and ask the devil what it wanted him to know about itself. At first the devil was disrespectful, calling him names like wimp and sissy, saying that he let people boss him around and that he was no match for Judy. It went on to say that Judy didn't care about him and cited the development and power of exiles, 87. As evidence the fact that she had gone on a business trip the week after his father had died. As Tom remained calm in the face of its ranting, the devil started to relax and told him how, all Tom's life, it had tried to protect him from attack and keep him from trusting too much. It said it had a never-again philosophy in which no one gets a second chance to hurt him. I had Tom ask it about the parts of him it protected. The devil showed Tom an image of himself as a young boy in his parents' house, being berated by his father. Tom watched this scene for several minutes, weeping silently through much of it. I had Tom ask the boy if that was everything he wanted Tom to know and if he felt as though Tom fully understood how bad that experience was for him. The boy let Tom know that that was one of many such episodes that left him feeling worthless. I had Tom enter the scene and take the boy out of it to a safe, comfortable place in the present where he could unload that sense of worthlessness. Once in the safe place, the boy was able to remove the sense of worthlessness, which he experienced as a black tar on his skin. Tom said that once the tar was off the boy, he brightened and wanted to go to the beach and play. After Tom helped the boy, I had him return to the devil to see how it reacted to this change. Tom said that its image had changed and that now it looked like a teenage boy dressed in leather, looking tough but seeming much more relaxed. This devil-come teen agreed that if Tom could take care of that boy, the devil wouldn't have to jump in all the time to protect the boy from 88. You are the one you've been waiting for. Judy. After watching Tom do this work, Judy said she had more empathy for him and more understanding of what his rages were about. She also said she hadn't realized the impact of her leaving on the business trip and apologized. After several sessions like this, Tom became far less volatile, and the focus of therapy shifted to other issues. Tom's exiles interpreted Judy's going on a business trip during his time of high need to mean that she didn't value him. To them, Judy was supposed to be the person who would remove their sense of unlovability, but instead she confirmed it by abandoning him. That slight ignited the shame and survival terror that Tom's exiles already carried from his father's tongue lashings and made those young, needy parts of him even more desperate for Judy's love. But to Tom's devil, she was no better than his father and, consequently, it would never again allow her access to those hurt little boys in Tom. Many couples enter my office embattled over seemingly petty issues. As therapy unfolds, however, it becomes clear that one of them suffered an attachment re-injury earlier in their relationship, sometimes even decades before. Some, like Tom, felt abandoned at a time of great vulnerability. Others felt betrayed by an affair or terrorized by a physical threat or cruel comment during a previous fight. Whether or not you experience something your partner does as an attachment re-injury has less to do with the nature of the act and more to do with how much it reactivates the pre-existing burdens of your exiles. Many people might have the development and power of exiles, 89. Been disappointed with Judy, but wouldn't have felt mortally wounded. For so many couples, however, any awareness of the re-injury root of their squabbles is lost in the jungle of unpleasant and unrelated interactions that grow around it. Many therapists try to hack paths through that jungle by teaching communication skills to couples, by helping them resolve the conflicts they bring in, or by assigning homework designed to create more intimacy, only to find that the paths they clear are quickly overgrown because the attachment re-injury that fertilizes the jungle is never unearthed. On the other hand, once a couple gets close to that open attachment wound, the resulting pandemonium is often frightening to everyone, including the therapist. The reason couples do their best to avoid talking about attachment re-injuries is because the emotions surrounding such events have been so explosive in the past. The hurt partner feels so upset about the incident that his protective parts erupt in ways that, to an outside observer, often look like an extreme overreaction. The culpable partner becomes scared and defensive, minimizing the impact of her actions and focusing instead on the other's inability to get over it, which further enrages him, and so on. Because Tom mainly feels his exile's vulnerability, he has little awareness of how angry and demanding of an apology he is being. His constant harassment further enrages Judy, who responds by saying that she's not his father and he should get over it, and on they go. In other 90, you are the one you've been waiting for. Words, an attachment re-injury often sets in motion a process in which the injured partner repeatedly gets further wounded and the perpetrator feels that he or she will never be forgiven. Couples who get caught in escalating slugfests like that usually wind up in one of two patterns. One is to lock away the issue and try not to talk about it again. That solution can keep them together, albeit with increased protectiveness. Couples opting for that pattern come to have an exiled issue that affects them in the same way that an individual's exile does. It becomes an area of the relationship that they fear, and they avoid anything that might trigger it. Yet, like a child locked in the basement, they know it's there and needs attention. It's just that trying to deal with it always seems to make things worse. The other pattern happens when they can't exile it. Like a missing tooth that your tongue can't stop returning to, the injured partner constantly brings up the issue, each time with the same painful result. These couples usually don't stay together. It is too stressful to live in that kind of crisis long term. Obviously, neither of these patterns is ideal, but since most people have no idea of how to care and speak for their own exiles, they don't have alternatives. Once a couple is able to unearth the attachment re-injury that lies beneath their daily jungle of charged exchanges, they have a chance to resolve it. A therapist who isn't intimidated by intense emotion can help the injured partner tell her story about how hurtful the other's actions were and help him listen compassionately and apologize sincerely. couples can experience. The development and power of exiles, 91. Relief and renewed intimacy in such sessions that can serve them well for a time. In my opinion, however, that healing is incomplete because while the injured person's exiles feel better about the partner, they still carry emotions and beliefs from earlier experiences that will be triggered again at some point. The couple has been brought back together after being blown apart by having stepped on a landmine, but their relationship remains a minefield. Exercise. 1. Have you suffered one or more attachment re-injuries in the history of your relationship? How did you and your partner handle that event? Does it still come up or have you buried it? How much of your current conflicts might be related to it? 2. How scary would it be to follow the feelings from that event inside to find the parts that are stuck in those scenes and in much earlier ones? Trailheads and tormentors. This book will not only help you and your partner reconnect, but will also allow you to eliminate the minefield. To do that, you will need to be willing to find the ways your partner has hurt you and then use the feelings from those episodes as 92. You are the one you've been waiting for. Trailheads. What I mean by that is to focus on the hurt part of you and ask where it is stuck in the past. In doing that, you will be following the trail of emotion to its source, the original attachment injury, and in witnessing it, you will be able to heal it and learn to care for the exile that carried it. Later chapters will describe this process in more detail. For now, know that it is possible to live with your partner in a very different way. When one of you gets hurt, you both focus inside, find the parts involved, witness what those parts want you to know about their current and past pain, and share your discoveries with one another. In doing so, you are clearing your minefields by stepping on the landmines each of you brought to the relationship and then diffusing them so they won't explode again. By stepping on your landmines, your partner becomes your valued tormentor. She mentors you by tormenting you. Without her, you wouldn't be able to find many of the exiles you need to heal. And as you become comfortable speaking to her about your inner experiences with your exiles, after following the trailheads she reveals, you will find her loving acceptance and support sublime. Together you will share a vulnerable and rewarding form of intimacy as partners on a journey of mutual healing and growth. You will be helping each other find and rescue your basement children. Once released, those grateful, delightful inner children form a powerful bond between you that is capable of overriding the typical irritations and differences that exist in all committed relationships. The development and power of exiles, 93. Summary. I'll summarize the points made in the preceding pages so we can examine each of them in more detail. First, let's review why lasting intimacy is so difficult and elusive. 1. Most of us have learned from our families and culture to exile our most sensitive and intimacy-seeking parts into the basements of our psyches. Because of having been exiled, those parts are love-starved. In addition, from our original attachment injuries, those exiles carry extreme beliefs about the kind of person who can save them, what love is, and what they deserve in relationships. 2. Because we don't know how to deal with our exiles, we enter intimate relationships hoping to get from our partner the love those exiles crave. Those basement-dwelling parts can make us pick the wrong person, make us become addicted to and stay with that person too long, and keep us from being attracted to or remaining with the right person. 3. Because our exiles are so desperate, easily hurt, and terrifying to us when they are upset, we have other parts that protect them by using one of the 3 projects. 1. Changing our partner. 2. Changing ourselves to please our partner. Or 3. Giving up on our partner and distracting or numbing. 4. Consequently, when our exiles are focused on our partner, he will feel overburdened by our clinging, jealousy, and neediness. Then when our protectors jump in, he will feel shut out and blamed. 94. You are the one you've been waiting for. 5. When our partner acts like one of our parts, we will relate to him in the same way we relate to that part. If we judge ourselves as ridiculously weak when we feel sad or needy, when our partner's vulnerability triggers our own, we'll overtly or covertly judge him as weak. If we learn to view our assertive parts as selfish, We'll be uncomfortable with our partner's assertiveness. Solution. Now let's examine the solution to this seemingly impossible dilemma. 1. We each have a source of love within us called the self. From this place, we can retrieve our exiles from our inner basements and heal their wounds sufficiently that they trust us to care for them. When this happens, our protectors relax and cease to give our partner such a hard time. We can become our own part's primary caretaker. 2. Because our former exiles are no longer locked away and now trust us, they are not so desperate, oversensitive, or in need of protection. They let us choose the right person and open our heart to that person without the neediness, trepidation, or protectiveness that characterized our former attempts at intimacy. 3. When our former exiles trust ourselves to be their primary caretaker, our partner can be our part's secondary caretaker and can help them feel accepted and loved by an outside person in a way they never have before. In that context, our parts can learn. The development and power of exiles, 95. That intimacy can be safe and rewarding, and that they deserve to be loved unconditionally. 4. When we love our parts and they trust our leadership, they don't have to distort our perception of our partner or take over and attack him. They are free to care about his needs because they aren't starving themselves. They can lavish him with affection because they have plenty to spare. Thus, the issues that most couples struggle with, expressing affection, respectful communication, and sensitivity to the other's needs, all flow naturally from a well-fed, self-led inner system. 5. In addition to being the secondary caretaker of our parts, our partner can be an invaluable tormentor, that is, a person who mentors us by tormenting us. It is very difficult to find all our basement children when we're not in an intimate relationship because often we only become aware of them when they are triggered by an intimate partner. Inevitably, our partner will act like an early caretaker who hurt us, and we will have an extreme reaction, an attachment re-injury. If we follow the trail of emotion to its inner source, we will find yet another exile in need of our love. Chapter 3. Courageous Love and Doomed Relationships. Courageous Love and Doomed Relationships, 97. The neo-exiles, parts exiled by the relationship. So far we've focused on how the power and influence of the parts you exiled when you were younger and their protectors can organize your relationships. It is time now to discuss another set of parts that can make or break relationships. When he married, writer Michael Ventura, 1988, said this about his parts: some of them are gladly and enthusiastically married with, as the wonderful old phrase goes, abiding faith. Some are married but frightened, nervously married, hesitant as to their capacities, their endurance. Some are hostile to the marriage. The frightened and hostile ones may be in the minority, yet they exist. They speak with our mouths sometimes, page 19. The hostile ones are often the parts that had a great deal of access to you before you got involved with the other person, but became exiled by your decision to become a couple with that person. I call these parts neo-exiles. To distinguish them from the exiles you entered the relationship with. Newlyweds Carlos and Marta were perpetually fighting over how much money she spent on clothes. When I had Carlos listen inside about that issue, he found a part that resented the fact that he hadn't gone out with his friends since their marriage. Once he spoke for that part to Marta, she said that she didn't like how much he used to drink with them, but otherwise she was fine if he went out once in a while. Carlos was surprised. He had assumed that Marta hated his friends because of how upset she used to become when he'd return home. After Carlos's friendship loving. 98. You are the one you've been waiting for. Part felt heard by Marta and saw that she would make room for it. Carlos no longer hassled her about money. In that example, the couple was able to accommodate Carlos's part because its exiling was based on a misunderstanding and Marta didn't have a big charge about the issues involved. This is not always the case. Why are we so intent on getting our partner to change, to never show certain parts? There are many reasons. Let's start at the beginning, with the decision to commit to a partner. We already discussed how your basement exiles are looking for a redeemer who has qualities like the caretaker who originally hurt you, or who seems strong and able to protect you. Those exiles will be upset when your partner strays from that profile, and you will try to get him to lock up the parts of him that don't fit your part's expectations. It's not true, however, that all mate selection choices are made from those needy parts. If your exiles have been hurt repeatedly by intimacy, your protectors will override the exile's redeemer search and begin looking for a partner who won't trigger your exiles. When you make a protector-based decision like that, you trade passion for safety and settle for a partner who may be boring but is, perhaps, conscientious, steady, loyal, nice, and so on. In other words, you have a partner who doesn't threaten your vulnerability or even want to get near it. In such an arrangement, whenever she strays from that safe profile, your protectors will. Courageous love and doomed relationships, 99. Punish her. To stay with you, she will have to lock up any parts that want intimacy or any communication that goes beneath the surface facade that initially attracted you. In another protector-based scenario, you may have been drawn to your partner because you felt weak or incompetent and he seemed emotionally strong and sophisticated. As a result, whenever he shows his own vulnerability or insecurity, you lose respect for him and let him know it in subtle ways. He quickly learns that his younger parts aren't welcome in your relationship. Because of our culture's socialization process, this pattern often, but not always, conforms to gender roles. Some couples make it through the mate selection process in a honeymoon state and just love everything about each other. That state only lasts until one or both partners' exiles get hurt or disappointed by the other. As we've discussed, it is at this point that their protectors initiate one or more of the three projects: change the partner, change themselves, or give up and distance. Each of these projects results in the exiling of previously powerful parts, whether they are yours or your partner's. Perhaps your partner suddenly thinks your way of dressing is too casual, hates how hard you work, or is jealous of your friendships. Maybe she has trouble when you express vulnerability or neediness, or can't tolerate your anger. Perhaps out of fear of losing your partner, you cut off from your sexuality, your assertiveness, or your passion for a risky career. In this way, through your decision to become a couple. 100. You are the one you've been waiting for. You wind up exiling, or at least neglecting, more parts, such as the ones that like to party, flirt, work, or couldn't care less about your appearance, or the ones that want nurturing or that want to speak about some imbalance in your relationship. Unlike the parts you exiled when young, however, these neo-exiles once had a great deal of power. They aren't used to being excluded, and they continue to have loud voices in your inner family despite their loss of influence. If, because of how you interact with your partner, there continues to be no room in your life for them, they can sabotage the relationship. The neo-exiling power of abandonment anxiety, many other reasons, can also lead one partner to want to exile parts of the other, including differences in ethnicity, taste, class, upbringing, and trauma histories. One culprit, however, trumps all the others in its power to make one partner try to change the other, and that is abandonment anxiety. Since you have been socialized not to care for your own exiles and to believe that your partner holds the key to your happiness, if not your survival, you will try to eliminate or at least tame certain parts of your partner that become threatening. Ironically, it is often those same parts that attracted you in the first place. Sociologist Francisco Alberoni, in Wellwood, 1985, describes one version of this bind. Whenever we fall in love, the other person always appears rich, with a superabundant life. The beloved is always a vital force, free, unforeseeable. Courageous love and doomed relationships, 101. Polymorphous. She is like a marvelous wild animal, extraordinarily beautiful and extraordinarily alive, an animal whose nature is not to be docile but rebellious, not weak but strong. The one we love attracts and gives pleasure precisely because she possesses this force, which is free and liberating, but also unforeseeable and frightening. This is why the person who is more frightened imposes on the other a great many restrictions, a great many small sacrifices, all of which are basically intended to make her gentle, safe, and innocuous. And the other person gradually accepts them. She has friends, but she decides not to go out with them. She used to travel, but now she stays home. She used to love her profession, but now she neglects it in order to devote herself to her lover. To avoid upsetting her lover, she imperceptibly eradicates everything that may have that effect. She makes many small renunciations, none of which is serious. She gladly makes them because she wants her lover to be happy, and she tries to become what he wants her to be. Gradually, she becomes domestic, available, always ready, always grateful. In this way, the marvelous wild beast is reduced to a domestic pet. The tropical flower, plucked from its environment, droops in a little vase by the window. And the lover who asked her to become like this because he wanted to be reassured, because he was frightened by the new experience, winds up missing in her what he had previously sought and found. The person who stands before him is not the same one he had fallen in love with, precisely because at that time she was different and fully alive. He asked her to model herself on his fears, and now he faces the result of those fears, her nothingness, and he no longer loves her. Page 37. 102. You are the one you've been waiting for. To translate that into IFS, suppose I have exiles that feel weak and worthless, and are stuck in a place of lifelessness. I fall in love with you, with your vitality, confidence, and independence, because you bring hope to my exiles of escape from their dreadful state. Yet because those parts of me feel so weak and worthless, and can't believe my luck that someone like you would want to be with me, I constantly fear that you will find someone better and abandon me. Consequently, the same qualities in you that I so love become threatening, and my protectors go to work to erode your confidence, rein in your independence, and suck out your vitality. It doesn't take long for our relationship to become an arena for overt or covert battles. The battles will be covert when, as in Alberoni's scenario, you succumb to my taming project and I succeed in neo-exiling all the lively parts of you. Those parts don't disappear, however. Instead, they commence an underground, unconscious, guerrilla war to fray our connection. You may find, for example, that for reasons you can't understand, your sex drive dries up, you develop an eating disorder or drinking problem, you become obsessed with work or the children, or you battle against a shameful longing to have an affair. At the same time, my exiles fall out of love because this domesticated version of you no longer holds the promise of being able to pull them out of their pool of dreary worthlessness. Instead, I've managed to pull you into it. So I become critical of different things about you, your lack of desire for me, your drinking, or courageous love and doomed relationships, 103. Your lack of spontaneity or initiative, while at the same time I remain jealous and controlling, carefully watching to prevent your marvelous wild animal parts from returning to power. If, on the other hand, your parts resist my project, ours will be an overtly rocky road. There will be lots of heated "why are you trying to change me" arguments. You begin acting out, having secret relationships and lying to me about where you've been, spending extravagantly, or otherwise loudly rebelling against my attempts to assert my authority. I, in turn, escalate my efforts to control your runaway train. I constantly monitor your activities, asking suspiciously about where you're going or have been. I become a relationship detective, checking your email, combing through your credit card receipts, listening to your phone conversations on the extension. I punctuate my simmering righteous contempt for your behavior with threats and ultimatums. And I hate you for forcing me into this role. There are many different versions of this neo-exiling dance, all fueled by one or both partners' abandonment anxiety, which in turn is driven by a sense of worthlessness. As author Laura Kipnis, 2003, puts it, we prostrate ourselves at love's portals, anxious for entry, like social strivers waiting at the rope line outside some exclusive club hoping to gain admission to its plushy chambers, thereby confirming our essential worth and making us interesting to ourselves. Page 3. The prospect of being abandoned is so daunting in part because, in our culture, being alone carries the stigma of being an unlovable loser. And Mauro Lindbergh, in 104, You Are the One You've Been Waiting For. Wellwood, 1985, describes this well. How one hates to think of oneself as alone. How one avoids it. It seems to imply rejection or unpopularity. An early wallflower panic still clings to the word. One will be left, one fears, sitting in a straight-backed chair alone, while the popular girls are already chosen and spinning around the dance floor with their hot-palmed partners, page 146. To avoid this plight, many people settle for dance partners they know don't fit well and keep dancing with them for years despite being miserable. If only we weren't so anxious. To avoid falling into the patterns described above, some partners try to exile their anxiety and become dominated by protectors that don't let them care deeply about the other or invest much in the relationship. So what if she leaves? I'll be okay. With that approach, you won't wind up in the detective/controller role, and you'll likely have more power in the relationship because of the rule of least investment. The one who is less invested in the continuation of the relationship can control the terms of it. That is, by acting as though you care less than your partner, you can constantly stir her anxiety and keep her in line. The downside to this strategy is that you wind up numb, cut off from your heart and from your partner's love, so you're constantly dissatisfied, which, of course, only increases your partner's anxiety. And your partner resents your implicit threats. In situations in which each partner has highly vulnerable exiles, starving basement children, the normal rhythms of courageous love and doomed relationships, 105. Relationship also spark the 3 exiling projects. For example, despite what you might have hoped for or learned from the media, a healthy relationship isn't one in which both partners are perpetually close emotionally. We all have many parts, some of which love closeness, while others need independence. Infant researchers have shown that this rhythm of closeness and distance exists even in interactions between parents and their newborns. Babies will interact playfully with a parent for a period of time and then will suddenly turn away and disengage, as if they need a break from the intensity of interacting. So, from the beginning, we exhibit this alternating rhythm in intimate relationships. Some parents feel rejected when their baby pulls away from them. When that happens enough times, the baby will shut down. The same thing happens with couples. If, after a period of connection, your partner wants to do something separate from you and you interpret that as a rejection, she will feel misunderstood and will resent your exiling project toward the parts of her that need a little distance. On the other hand, if, after a period of distance, you view your partner's bids for affection as being clingy and too dependent, your reaction can start a vicious cycle between the two of you, as the parts of her that want connection feel unwelcome. 106. You are the one you've been waiting for. Exercise 1. What parts of you have you exiled because of your relationship? 2. How much has your abandonment anxiety or other burdens led you to exile parts of your partner? 3. How do you think those neo-exiles affect your relationship? Courageous love, if only there were a different way to handle that abandonment anxiety than to exile it or let it dominate our relationships. What if we knew how to become aware of our essential worth on our own? What if we trusted that, no matter what our partner did, including abandoning us, we really would be okay, maybe not great, but okay, not because we can cut off from our feelings, but because we have trust in our own self-leadership? This is the only healthy solution to this human dilemma, and when you achieve a degree of trust and self-leadership, you become liberated from these exiling dances. You can accept and encourage your partner to explore all parts of him because they don't threaten you. Your partner senses that acceptance and freedom, which feel wonderful and unusual to him. He comes to trust that he doesn't have to protect himself from you and keeps his heart open. He relaxes with the knowledge that he can go where his heart leads him, even if that is away from courageous love and doomed relationships, 107. and you will remain connected at the level of self despite the lack of proximity. Emerson said, "The condition which high friendship demands is the ability to do without it." The same is true for high love, to do without your partner's physical presence, if necessary, because you support her life's journey, even when it departs from yours. That's a tough one for most of us. I remember how hard it was at times in my academic career when I was called upon to manifest such a selfless spirit. For example, there were several young, sharp psychology interns I mentored who, if after their internship they had remained with the institute I worked for, could have helped me develop the IFS model and furthered my career. While their interests or family considerations were drawing them elsewhere, I suspected that if I worked at it, I could convince them to stay with me. In each case, I struggled to keep my parts out of their decision-making processes so they could find their own paths. I didn't always succeed, but I'm proud of the times when I did. Those episodes produced major inner battles, and the stakes weren't that high. I knew I'd basically be fine without the help of those students. How hard is it, then, to keep your focus on what's best for the other person when that person is your intimate partner, the one your exiles are attached to for their well-being and survival? Too often we succumb to the temptation to clip our partner's wings so she won't fly away from us. If the exiling projects discussed above don't work, we may have to escalate. 108. You are the one you've been waiting for. Stalking, intimidation, and violence are often reflections of the desperate lengths to which abandonment fear will take us. Or we can develop a debilitating symptom and use it to keep our partner shackled to us. Maybe you're not afraid that your partner will leave you, but, instead, that you won't be respected by other people because of the way your partner is. His appearance, manners, sense of humor, line of work, or general lack of sophistication reflects badly on you, and you're sure you'll wind up in the wrong class of people or, worse yet, friendless. Similarly, it may be one or both of your parents whose respect you sense is waning because of your choice of mate. In this case, your abandonment anxiety is focused on peers or parents rather than your partner, but it is no less fueling of exiling projects aimed at the offending parts of your partner. This is not to suggest that if your partner tells you she's thinking of leaving, you should say, "That's fine, dear, you do what you need to do." Or that if he told embarrassing sexist jokes at the last party, you should think, "That's just the way he is," and let it go. It's important to speak for your affected parts and to request the changes in your partner that they want. But it's also important to explore their need for those changes to the point that you are sure they aren't motivated by the factors outlined above. Also, if you remain self-led when making the request, you will convey respect for the part of your partner that, for example, wants to leave or told the jokes. You aren't asking him to get rid of the part, but rather to explore whether there might be other ways to take care of it. Courageous love and doomed relationships, 109. It is only when you are able to calm your abandonment anxiety by caring for the parts that carry it that you can truly love your partner, because you can put her growth above your need for security. I call this courageous love. It is rare because our culture, including many psychotherapies and spiritual paths, encourages us to exile, rather than embrace, those scared parts. Courageous love may seem similar to the concept of differentiation that is promoted in some psychotherapies, but courageous love doesn't involve a heightened sense of your differentness or separateness from your partner. That rugged individualist type of differentiation is more likely when you exile your anxiety and become dominated by protectors in the way that many men in our culture have been taught to do. However, it is true that because you are less anxious, you are no longer as reactive to your partner's emotions and, consequently, you feel more separate in that sense. But when you have courageous love for your partner, at another level you feel more connected and similar to her than when you were anxious. You understand what William James meant when he said, at the turn of the century, every bit of us, at every moment, is part and parcel of a wider self. You recognize that at the level of yourselves, you are not different because you are drops of the same divine ocean or sparks of the same eternal flame, part and parcel of the wider self. It is this realization of connectedness that allows you to give your partner the freedom to grow. It is the same kind of love that a parent wants to have for his child, to let her follow her heart. 110. You are the one you've been waiting for. Without undue concern for his needs and with an abiding sense of his loving presence accompanying her even when she comes to love someone else, adopts beliefs and practices that contradict his, or is geographically distant. Why is it so much easier to have this kind of love for your child than your partner? Only because you have been socialized to believe that your partner, not your children, should take care of your parts. When you become the one your parts trust and look to, you can have courageous love for everyone. Courageous love also means having the courage to love someone despite the potential for tremendous pain. Many of us who carry deep attachment injuries have protectors that see no good coming from allowing us to care enough for another person that losing her could hurt. These protectors have a variety of strategies designed to keep our needy, vulnerable exiles from fully attaching to our partner, to never let our partner fully enter our heart. The position of many protectors is that the more attached exiles become, the greater the pain when the inevitable end comes. To face the terror of that potential loss and open wide your unguarded heart takes considerable courage. You will not have the courage to let your parts strongly attach to another unless they are already attached to you. If your exiles trust that even if you lose your partner, they will have you to help them with the pain of the loss and to care for them in general, your protectors will open the gate. If that isn't the case, they won't allow the gate to open, and your prospects for real intimacy will be limited. It's quite a bit easier to seem as though you have courageous love and doomed relationships. 111. Courageous love for a partner's growth if you never really let her in. If you don't let yourself feel much for another, you won't have that much to lose. The challenge is to do both, to love someone intensely and with abandon while simultaneously fostering her growth, even if it's away from you, and accepting her parts. Not many people can do that. It's important to clarify that this discussion of courageous love is not a polemic against commitment. Instead, it raises questions regarding what you are committing to and why. Courageous love involves commitment to fostering the mutual exploration, healing, and growth of both internal families and self-to-self connectedness. You and your partner may agree that this process best takes place in the context of an exclusive relationship. Before many people can fully open their heart to their partner, they need reassurance that they won't be abandoned. Perhaps you have exiles that are so afraid of being hurt that whenever you begin getting close to someone, you lose your desire for that person and point your heart elsewhere. The self-led vision of devoting yourself to one person allows you to follow the trailheads that arise when the usual escapes are eliminated. Or perhaps your exiles carry burdens of betrayal from previous relationships. Being with a partner who is willing to focus exclusively on you creates a safe environment for you to heal those parts. Or it may be that for other good reasons, economic fairness, raising children, and sexually transmitted diseases among them, you and your partner agree that exclusivity is desired. 112. You are the one you've been waiting for. Mutual growth can occur in relationships involving agreements of exclusivity as well as those that don't, as long as the agreements are made from self rather than from the anxiety of parts. Whether that anxiety manifests as possessiveness or commitment phobia, it is no basis for a relationship. I believe there would be far less fear of commitment if you could trust that you were committing to a self-led relationship based on courageous love rather than to a process that requires the exiling of your exuberance. As Jungian analyst Adolf Guggenbull Craig, in Wellwood, 1985, writes, how often one observes how interesting, witty, and animated the married person is when alone, but then with the marriage partner present, every sign of liveliness vanishes. Page 158. That's a steep price to pay for the false security of parts-based commitment. Little wonder that so many make that bargain with great trepidation and break it at the first opportunity. The irony is that a self-to-self relationship based on courageous love is so fulfilling that if you were to taste it, you wouldn't be inclined to leave it. To have all of your parts feel accepted and embraced, To have the freedom to explore and express all of them so that your liveliness doesn't have to vanish. To experience abiding encouragement to follow your trailheads and learn your lessons. To know that the loving support of the other's self is always there, no matter how life hurts you and no matter how the parts of each of you interfere. To feel the sacred coming home sense of connection to the divine in each other. For most of us, that is our heart's desire. Why would you want to leave that? Courageous love and doomed relationships, 113. Finally, courageous love also applies to all aspects of inner and outer relating. Courageous love includes all of the following. 1. You love your parts enough that you speak to your partner for them even though he might react angrily. Many people sacrifice groups of their parts out of fear of upsetting or losing their partner. I often ask clients if they would remain silent if their external children were suffering in the same way. I encourage them to listen to and respect the needs of their parts as much as they would their children. Again, this is only possible if the parts that are attached to your partner trust you to care for them if he gets angry or leaves. 2. You have the courage to listen to feedback from your partner that parts of you may not want to hear. Your partner can help you learn the lessons you are here to learn by revealing trailheads you can pursue, and also by holding up a mirror and letting you know the effects of your parts on her. Most of us have little idea of the powerful impact our protectors have on others because when they are active, we're mainly feeling the exiles they are protecting. Seeing the value and truth in your partner's criticism can be challenging for that reason and, as well, because often she's speaking from a protector when she's criticizing you. Her extreme presentation makes it easy to write off what she's saying and miss the nuggets of truth embedded in her angry message. When you are able to listen with courageous love, you can hear those nuggets and then find and heal the parts involved in your triggered attitudes and behaviors. You also have the courage. 114. You are the one you've been waiting for. To apologize with an open heart and make a lasting repair. 3. When things get dark and both you and your partner are in a hurtful